You know, there's a great story behind every airplane at the Selfridge Military Air Museum, and it never fails. The deeper you dig and the more research you do, the more interesting the story actually becomes. That's a big part of the value of aviation museums like the Selfridge Military Air Museum, and also the volunteers and visitors like you that help keep the research and history alive. In fact, one of the things that I've learned here at the Selfridge Military Air Museum is the deeper you dig into the history of an aircraft, the more truly interesting that history becomes. And in some cases, you find some fascinating missing pieces to the story and some truly bizarre footnotes. That's what happened to me a few weeks ago when I started doing some research on this aircraft, our nice-looking Martin RB-57 Canberra here at the museum. The twin-engine RB-57 reconnaissance aircraft was built by the Glenn Martin Company under license from the British aircraft manufacturer English Electric. Late in its history, aviation icon Chuck Yeager actually flew 127 combat missions in the B-57 Canberra over Vietnam. The original version of the aircraft, the B-57, first flew in 1953. But 5 years later, in 1958, as part of the modernization of the Air National Guard, 4 units, including the 172nd Tactical Reconnaissance Squadron at Kellogg Field in Battle Creek, Michigan, received the RB-57A from the U.S. Air Force. Then, 13 years after that, in 1971, the RB-57As at Battle Creek were replaced by little Cessna 02 Skymasters, and the unit's mission was redesignated as Forward Air Control, or FAC. We've actually got a nice-looking Cessna 02 Skymaster on display here at the Selfridge Military Air Museum as well. Here she is right here. But our elegant, Anglo-designed Martin RB-57A right here, aircraft number 521485, was restored in 1990 by volunteers from the original Battle Creek unit. And today, here she sits, one of the prettiest collaborations of British and U.S. aircraft manufacturers, and one of our most interesting artifacts. But that's far from the end of the story. In fact, it says nothing about its remarkable beginning. Delving backward into the lineage of the RB-57 Canberra and the reason why the United States decided to buy a bomber from the British in the first place is a very interesting story. If you go way back in jet bomber development, right before the emergence of the B-57 bomber in U.S. service, there's a small chance you may find 1 or 2 photos of a weird-looking, kind of dog-faced airplane that looks like it was assembled from an unrelated collection of aircraft parts. And that's where the story gets really interesting. In our next video, we'll talk about the mystery behind one of America's best, most obscure, and little-known attack aircraft that was so far ahead of its time, the Air Force may not have been able to wrap its head around the idea. We'll do that here at the Selfridge Military Air Museum.